Hey mob, I am just jumping on that there's a yarn I need to share with you, and I needed to do it live because it needs to be organic. It needs to come from my heart and my truth, and it's a message that is bigger than me and is grounded and rooted in my current experience and enlightenment that has come through for me in the last few days. So it's a yarn, it's needed. I have the anchor for it. However, how it flows and how it unfolds and how it resonates for you if you're watching this now. It is the 1st of February 2025. I am currently sitting on beautiful Latchy country. I had to do this out by the river because that is the only way that this would connect and flow in the way that it needed to. So I have had a difficult start in 2025. I wasn't expecting it to be easy because I came through the hardest year of my life in 2024. So if you've followed my journey, I've shared quite openly the challenges that I've had with my mental health, with my separation, the complexities in my business and personal life, all wove together to compound on each other to create a very difficult year, which impacted my mental health and quite a few other things as well. So I have this really powerful capacity to go after big dreams, to go after big things and to do big things in the world. However, I also have a pattern of once going for those things, being really committed, being really energetic about it, and then once the thing has been achieved, disappearing off the radar and just kind of completely disconnecting from life and the world. It's almost like I'm only feeling like I'm worthy of showing up when I'm moving towards that thing. But once that thing is there, there's no sustainability or building of that thing becoming the foundation for the next level. It's like I show up, I get so far, but then I drop so far back before I start again. So this yarn is anchored in your self-worth, your self-belief. You might know things, but do you really believe those things? And it is anchored in, do you believe that you are worthy of the dreams that you have, of love, of wealth, of health, of your culture, of your identity? Because here's the thing, if you don't inherently own and believe that you are worthy of the things that you say that you want or the things that you desire, or of being a good person and having a good life, you will find a way to self-sabotage. And I'm not talking about mentally or consciously. I am talking about in the physical and the nervous system level. If you do not believe, or your life experience has set you up to have had experiences, whether it's once or it has been reconfirmed, that you are not worthy, you are not allowed to be that person, whether you have been shamed, abandoned, rejected, or been attacked for who you are in the world, whether you're a woman, whether you're an Indigenous person, whether you're a person who comes from a diverse background. You may have had an event in your life where you were rejected, or you were abandoned, or you were assaulted because of who you are in the world. And if that is the case, and you have then not only about the event, but you have internalized a story or a narrative, and you now have a belief and a mindset that you are not worthy of having good things, that you are not worthy of being healthy or in a loving relationship, a healthy, safe relationship where there's good communication, everyone takes responsibility and is accountable for their own experience, but also what they're bringing to the table in the relationships, whether it's between parents and children, whether it's at the workplace, or whether it's between an intimate partner or friends or family, whatever it is. And if you're someone who carries multiple roles or multiple levels of experience of abandonment or rejection, and then you've then internalized that as proof of evidence of going, look, I've been abandoned by my parent, by my partner, and when I showed up and shared with the world that this is who I am, the world pushed back and said you're not allowed to be that person, then it is natural that we're going to internalize that narrative of not being good enough, of there being shame or grief or guilt about who you are and that you're not allowed to be that person. And yet, for me, this is exactly what's been happening. So I had a really deep yarn last night with a friend and my coach and trainer, Kimberly from the Weight Buffet, but also I've been working with Annie Karen Demery, who has been helping me work more on showing up consistently in my business, in my life, and in the things and the aspirations that I'm working towards, without losing myself to what's going on in my life, without minimizing the impact of the spiral when I am impacted by a hard moment or a challenge or a mental health spiral. So she's been helping me work on my capacity to be consistent in how I show up and to find the internal anchors and resources to show up in a consistent way without spiraling because of what's going on externally in the world. And it's because of the capacity and the support that I've been receiving that I've been creating space in myself to get curious about my own experience. Because for someone who is identified as the Barkindji Warrior, who has won 3 world titles in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, has 3 degrees under my belt, has started 3 businesses and founded another business with 2 other powerful women, is on stages telling my story consistently, is on social media showing up, there was a severe disconnect in the consistency of my showing up. Now, I'm capable of winning world titles. I'm capable of getting on a stage and telling my story, or jumping on here and being confident in sharing a moment of wisdom. Yet the showing up isn't consistent, and I no longer want to have these downward spirals. I no longer want to have these gaps in my consistency and my capacity to show up. And I really have been sitting with it, because the start of January was on purpose and in alignment, and I delivered my first Empowered Warrior Heart event. I was consistent at the gym. I have a plan for the year, and Kilana started off really strong. And then Thursday last week, we delivered a really powerful event on country for up to 17 of our young people at Kilana. And then by Thursday night, I was completely tapped out, and it has taken me a week to get back on my feet. And I really had to sit with this and go, what is driving this? There's something deeper behind this. And between yesterday and this morning and going to the gym and stuff, I inherently do not believe that I am worthy or allowed to be the Barkindji Warrior, Warrior Heart, healthy, sustainable, wealthy, worthy, and well in myself, in my life, and the work that I do in the world. And it's not just my own internal narrative and belief. This is intergenerational. This isn't just coming from my lived experience. Our shame has been weaponized against me as a woman and against me as an Indigenous person. And what I mean by that is that colonial and patriarchal narratives and experiences have shaped my ancestors and aspects of my culture that we are not allowed to be proud and strong Aboriginal people. That to do so can cost us our kids, can cost us our very lives. And this isn't just historical, it is happening now, today. Being an Aboriginal person or being a woman in this country is politicized. Our very identity, our very humanity is up for debate. At a federal, national conversation, what it means to be an Aboriginal woman, to be a mother, to be a woman in this country, to be a First Nations person is up for debate, and people around how we're allowed to be proud, how we're allowed to live our lives, the fact that we want to say in our own environment, the fact that our children are still the most targeted community in this country, the most incarcerated community in this country. And when a risk factor hits something in Australia, Aboriginal people are 3 times, 4 times more likely to be victims of that experience. And yet, This isn't just my generation. This is historical. For the last 230 years of colonial occupation in Australia, they have weaponized our cultural practice and identity against us. They took our children, they took our land, they took our culture. And then as we started to rebuild as a collective, and the warriors that kept fighting and the warriors that we lost laid the foundations for the next generations to pick up the fight, they laid another battle in front of us. They laid another barrier in front of us. The war has never stopped. But here's the other thing is, in order to be a successful woman in Australia or a Western or a patriarchal society, in order to be a proud, staunch First Nations person, we have been conditioned to believe that we have to justify or prove ourselves more than our white counterparts or our non-Indigenous counterparts. And we have bought into that narrative. We have allowed ourselves to be conditioned and believe that in order to be a powerful woman, to stand in a room full of powerful men, I have to do more. I have to be better. As a First Nations person, to be a proud, staunch First Nations person in a room built and designed for colonial and patriarchal culture and narratives and business, I need to be better. I need to be more. That has been weaponized against us and used to condition us and keep us in chains that we have internalized of our own making. Shame is something that I hear a lot from our community or our kids when it's like, oh, we ask them to speak up or tell their story or to do something different. No, I'm not doing that. That's shame. Now, here's the thing. There is a distinct difference between being shame and being embarrassed and being shy to being shame. When you are shy and embarrassed, that's fine. You might have the personality where it's like you don't want to be up there on show in front of people. But when we say we are ashamed to be who we are. We are feeding into and strengthening the colonial and patriarchal narrative that we are not worthy of being powerful Aboriginal First Nations people. I'm not allowed to be a Barkindji Warrior woman with white skin. Who am I to be a proud, staunch Aboriginal woman? Like, from my own mob, I've had my own mob turn around. Aboriginal people say, you're not allowed to be Barkindji. Who do you think you are? But then I've also had white people, oh, how can you be black? Like, look at the color of your skin. What percentage are you? Yet these are all external narratives. And they are very real, and it has been conditioned into my mind, and it influences what I believe about myself, what I believe I am worthy of, what I am capable of, and it influences how I show up. Yet it's not at a conscious level, it's at an unconscious level. Like when you get that feeling and you go to say something, you're like, but I don't feel safe enough to say that. I don't feel like I'm allowed to say that. We are expected to prostitute our trauma to justify our applications for funding, the problems in our community, the challenges and the pain and the trauma that our community faces because of colonial and patriarchal history is weaponized against us. We are charged with the responsibility to fix the problems and the wounds and the trauma in our community that were not of our own making. And when we struggle to fix the intergenerational trauma, we face the judgment of going, well, see, they can't handle their own community. They can't raise their own children. They can't fix their own problems. Like, it is, our own voices and sovereignty is still up for debate in a country that hasn't reconciled with its own history as a violent history of genocide. Our truth is still up for debate. Women are being killed every week due to family violence. Majority of that which is targeted from male violence against women and children. And yet it is still up for debate. The funding is still being debated. Funding is still being withdrawn. Our solutions are not being funded or supported by colonial and Western systems that profit and benefit from us living in these violent, victimized circumstances and mindsets. Now, there is a difference between being a victim of an event and victimizing ourselves. And what I mean by that is, I've had a lot of shit happen to me in my life. I've experienced sexual abuse. I've experienced lateral violence. I've experienced family violence. I've hurt myself. I've had multiple people in my life tell me I'm not allowed to be that person. I'm not good enough. I'm loud. I'm too much. I'm not enough. I've had people leave me or reject me because of who I am in the world. And yet I victimized myself when I internalized that narrative, and I want to go after a big dream, but then it's like, oh, but I'm not allowed to have that dream because of this experience that happened to me. Or I'm not willing to do the work of addressing my own trauma and pain so that I can become better and stronger. And yet I've got someone trying to help me, and yet it's like, no, I can't heal that. It's too hard. That's when I start to victimize myself and I keep myself stuck. And we are the ones who need to stand up. We are the ones who need to stand up and take responsibility for who we are being and what we are accepting in our lives, what we are allowing. It might not be intentional, but if you do not believe you are worthy, if you don't believe it in your soul, at a soul level, at a body level, at a spirit level, that you are worthy of healthy relationships, of being wealthy and worthy in your own life, of living a life that is in alignment with who you are, that you wake up on purpose, with purpose, and for a purpose that is bigger than yourself, that you are worthy of having a home environment where you can just come home and that you belong and that you are allowed to be yourself. If you are not at home in your own self, if you are not in love with who you are within your own self and doing that in a way, how can you expect to have a life that is well and worthy and wealthy? And this is the narrative. This is what I am. That's what came up for me is the last few days is I have allowed shame, guilt, abandonment, trauma get in the way of me doing the work. That's why I allow myself limited levels of success and happiness. At a nervous system level, I do not know how to sit with my own self-worth and my own power, because I do not believe that I am worthy or allowed to be the Barkindji Warrior, Warrior Heart, Chantel Thompson, proud and powerful. When that truth hit me, it hit me here, and it was so deep that it almost dropped me to my knees. But this isn't just my experience. This is the experience that my mother had, that my grandmother had. Australia was telling my mother and my grandmother that they weren't allowed to be proud, strong Aboriginal women. That if they were strong, proud Aboriginal women, they could lose their children. Their very existence, their very humanity was politicized, was debated, was hated upon, and was allowed to do that publicly. And this isn't 500 years ago. This is my mother and my grandmother, let alone the generations who come before them. So for me to stand here and say I'm a proud First Nations Barkindji Yimpa woman is healing the generations before me. It also strengthens the generations that stand with me, but it gives permission and lays legacy and resources for the generations to come. And yet, I can say it and I know it to be true, but at the deepest levels of my soul, I wasn't owning it and I wasn't believing it because I didn't believe that I was allowed. And here's the thing, I have lived experience of when I have shown myself to the world, I have been abandoned and rejected by those who were supposed to love me the most. I have been in relationships, the most intimate of relationships, where I've said, this is who I am, this is the life I want to create. And those loved ones have said, you're not allowed to be that person, or they've weaponized that against me. They've weaponized my most vulnerable parts, my own heart, my own dreams, my culture, my very identity against me to keep me small or to keep me in chains or to say you're not allowed to be that person in the world. And this has happened in all the areas that are sacred to me. In jiu-jitsu, I've had coaches or other students reject me or abandon me or say I'm not allowed to be that person. My relationships, in education, in jiu-jitsu, in my culture, in my community, in my work. I have come up against people that I care deeply about and that have a connection and an influence in my life. And I've said, this is who I am, this is the dreams that I have, and this is the world that I want to live in. And that has been used against me or said, no, you're not allowed to be that person. And in some situations, it wasn't safe to be that person. But if I'm going to do something about it, I need to heal that narrative within. I need to become the Barkindji Warrior in my own world. Because here's the thing. As a proud First Nations woman, my success was not born from my trauma. My success and power was not seated in my colonial and patriarchal and lived trauma and experiences. Yes, I've had sexual abuse. Yes, I've tried to suicide twice, multiple times in my life. Yes, I've hurt myself. Yes, I've hurt people that I've loved. I've experienced family violence. I've experienced lateral violence. And yet my success as a world champion, my success as an educated Aboriginal woman and founding businesses, my courage to become a mother, my courage to share my story with the world was because of my First Nations culture, was because of being a woman. The seeds of my dreaming and power are culturally grounded, ancestrally guided, and dreaming led. They are born from my cultural sovereignty, from my dreaming, from my power. They might have been influenced and they might have been shaped by the fires that I have walked through, but they were not born from that. I will no longer prostitute my trauma to justify my success and my power and my rise. I will not use or prostitute my trauma to justify my success or other people's investments in me. Anyone that is in the grant writing space or applying for funding or partnerships, majority of the language is what problems, even in business, what problems are you solving? Rather than looking at the power and potential of things, we are shaped and conditioned to look for the pain of things, to only want to create change when the pain and the consequences of that situation are devastating, or the consequences are far greater than what the price of what people are willing to pay. Because here's the thing, people need to get, life nudges us, the ancestors, country speaks to us when we need to create change. In our life, in our spirits, we feel it in our body when something isn't right for us. When we're living someone else's life or we're living someone else's version of who we're allowed to be, we know it in ourselves if we've got the courage to sit with ourselves. Our body speaks to us, our life speaks to us, our ancestors, our culture speaks to us, country speaks to us all the time. But human beings are really good at justifying the excuse and the reason to live in their own shit. And some people like the smell of their own shit. You could give them all the solutions in the world and they will still find a reason to excuse themselves as to why they can't be a part of their own sovereignty and self-determination. They will stay stuck in the dysfunction because it serves them and benefits them. Now, I'm not talking about the people who can't. I'm talking about the people who choose not to do better in their life, even though they know that if they did that thing or addressed that thing, it would open up a whole new world. Because a lot of people are more afraid of their success than they are their trauma and their dysfunction, because this is comfortable. This is a known thing. I have won world titles, and yet most people would think that that would elicit success and joy and aspirations. If anything, it sent me into a spiral. I didn't know what to do with that success. I didn't know how to use that success and ride it to the next thing. When I won my world titles, no one ever threw me a party when I came home. Like, not one world title. I never walked in on a surprise party. I never walked in on a surprise dinner or gathering of people saying, hey, we want to celebrate you. When I graduated university with my degrees, no one threw me a party or anything to honor or celebrate me and my success and what that meant for me and my life and what I'd done to get there, let alone what that would mean for my family or my community and what I would do with what I'd just done. I had to do that myself. I had to throw myself a birthday party at 35 and invite other people to come and celebrate me, because I was going to honor and celebrate at 35 all the things I'd done in life. I'd already won 3 world titles by that point, or maybe it was 2, I can't remember. I'd finished 3 degrees. I had 4 amazing children. I was successful in jiu-jitsu. I was building a successful business, but nobody was willing to come together to celebrate me, so I chose to celebrate myself. But in order for me to go to the next level, In order for me to embody and become the Barkindji Warrior, the warrior heart, and to be the person responsible for guiding this movement and seeding this movement of other warrior hearts, I need to believe and own at a nervous system level, at a soul, spirit level, that I am worthy and that I am allowed to be this person. But that's going to mean facing intergenerational levels of violence and experiences and stories and narratives where we were not allowed to be that. And it wasn't just that, it was not safe to be that in the world. It's still not safe. You only have to look at Australia right now, New Zealand and America. Indigenous people are under attack again. What is it about us being sovereign and grounded and strong and deadly in our culture and in ourselves that is so threatening to white people? How does us being strong and deadly in our culture and in ourselves as First Nations people take anything away from white people or from the colonial patriarchal systems? And yet as soon as we start to rise, as soon as we start to get a foothold in our sovereignty, in our healing and in our progress, they throw another firebomb at us that we are then scattered to then deal with the war, so that our resources are scattered and focused on crisis response rather than focusing on our rebuild and our healing. So every time I stand up and say I'm a proud, staunch First Nations Barkindji Ngimpa woman, every time I say I'm a proud woman, that is an act of revolution. It is an act of reclamation. It is the greatest act of resistance and of remembering and honouring of all of the power and the potential and the purpose that I was born with. And in order for me to be able to do the work that I'm called to do and that I want to do, I need to do the work to set myself free, which means healing intergenerational narratives. It means healing my own lived experience and that internal belief that I am not inherently worthy of the dreaming. That not just that I'm worthy, but that I'm capable, that I'm allowed to be the guide of the Barkindji Warrior, warrior heart movement and community, to write a book and tell my story, to have a business in the millions where I can invest and grow that and share that with the world. Because in my own innermost sanctums of environments and relationships that should have been sacred and safe, where I could just let the world fall away, my trauma, my history, and my dreams were weaponized against me, as was generations before me. And I shared recently with someone that in 2025, I was going to date myself. I was going to get to know myself and build a relationship with myself. And at first, I didn't realize how important and how imperative that work would need to be foundational before all else, because that is going to be the work that is going to set me free to become the person I need to be the Barkindji Warrior and the warrior heart in the world. I need to be it for myself first. I need to create the internal belief and permission and the skill set and the capacity to not only believe it and awaken to it, but then to actualize it, to work from that space and allow that space to be the space that I move from in the world. That I don't need other people's permission or acceptance to be who I am, and that by me being who I am and loving myself first and moving from that, I will become my own ancestor tree. I will become my own flow, and that those that I am meant to serve, those that are called for me to help or empower them or serve them in some way, will find me. I need to be myself in the world so that those looking for me can find me, is something that Arlen Hamilton says quite a lot. And this is what I wanted to share, is that in order to be the most powerful mother, in order to be the most powerful leader, in order to be the most powerful business person, in order to meet my obligations and responsibility for the roles that I choose to take up, of being a mum, of being Anishan, of being a Barkindji Ngimpa woman, of being a human being, I need to do the inner work in myself so that when I show up to be in those roles and I show up to serve from my power, my truth, and my heart, I can do so in alignment, and I can do so in a way that is sustainable. Because if I'm not grounded in myself, I can potentially do more harm than good. So here's the thing. Where in your life are you quitting on yourself? Where in your life are you hurting yourself? Or where are you not aware of an internal narrative that might be keeping you in chains, not of your own making, but they become your responsibility? Because here's the thing. The world right now is politicizing, is debating on my very identity as a mother, as a woman, as a First Nations person, all other things too, but those three things. It is not safe to be myself in the world, in my full power and purpose and potential. And yet, that is the only way to freedom and sovereignty. That is the work and my obligation in this time, is to speak my truth, is to develop my inner narrative so that shame and trauma and deficit are no longer a part of, they're a part of my story, but they're not the seed of my story. They're not what I lead with. They're what influenced and what shaped and impacted me, but it's not what drives me. It's not where my dreaming was born. My dreaming was seeded in the womb of my ancestors. I was called to this. I was called to remember my songlines. I was called to remember my culture. I am a Barkindji Warrior woman. That is who I am. That is how I move through the world. And I may not have grown up knowing all of my culture, but what I do know is enough for me to move forward with. I do not need a government's permission. I do not need another person's permission to be myself in the world. And yet I need to give that to myself, because my inner Chantel, my different versions of me, have only ever allowed myself to sit in the shadows and dance with my light, because I never felt safe or allowed to be my full self in the world. And yet, if I'm going to take up this role and be Anishan, be Namika, mother, and tell my story to the world, this is my inner work. This is my responsibility to heal my own inner narrative and beliefs, to become worthy, to become the woman who can walk in her worth, who can walk grounded in my wealth and my prosperity and my abundance and power as a First Nations woman, as a woman who has brought life into the world, as a woman who has done things that I never dreamed possible, and whose dreaming and ancestors are now calling her to go in a completely new level, a new direction where I don't know where it's going to take me. I don't know what's next. And yet I know that in order to become the person who can do that and stop this dancing with this stop playing with my power and my potential, I need to own the healing. I need to take responsibility for the work that I need to do on my mind, on my heart, to heal my soul, to heal the generations who came before me who were told that they weren't allowed to be themselves. All the times that I was told by people who were supposed to love and support me and who had responsibilities to be a part of my life and to be safe in my life, elders and parents and teachers and relationships, for all the times that who I was weaponized against me, or I was shut down, or I was told I wasn't allowed to be that person, or I was attacked, I need to heal those wounds. I need to make space for those wounds to be witnessed so that they can then begin to heal, because it is only by healing this story that I can really become the Barkindji Warrior. And that's one person at a time. If we're going to be leaders for others, or if we hold positions of power and privilege, or we hold roles of leadership, we have a responsibility to get a handle on our own shit, to take responsibility for who we are internally, for how we're showing up externally in those roles and responsibilities. And if you are not capable or willing to do the work of becoming the person who can meet the responsibility and the obligations of that role, you need to step aside. You need to be accountable to who you're being in those roles and responsibilities, whether it's as a parent, as a leader, as a staff member. We all bring something to the rooms and the roles that we're in. But are we taking a responsibility for who we're being to meet not just our bare minimum obligations, but the power and the potential of who we could be if we are well, if we are strong, if we are healthy, and if we are coming from our truth and our heart? Because here's the thing, when you come from the heart, it bypasses ego and it bypasses trauma. But only if we have the courage to sit in it. I am a very proud mother of 5 children. I'm Anishan to many more. I'm the founder of the Kilana Foundation. a space that was created from an opportunity and the power and the potential that I saw in our young women in this community, and by creating a space for them where they didn't have to be everything for the world, but they also weren't defined by their trauma and their narrative, but they also weren't pressured into leadership and everything else. It's a space where we just get to be. We get to figure out who we want to be, and then what's it going to take to get there, where we get to reclaim our culture and our identity and our voice, and to write a story that is grounded in our sovereignty and our self-determination. I'm the Barkindji Warrior. I've won 3 world titles. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And all of that means nothing if I don't inherently believe that I am worthy of those things, because everything that I do will be tainted. The energy that I bring to that underlying belief that I'm not allowed, that I'm not worthy to take up space, to do the things that I'm feeling called to do. That's the thing. It's not just that I want to do these things. My ancestors are telling me, pulling me. That's my responsibility. That's the direction that I need to go. This is my story to share. The Barkindji Warrior, warrior heart is my responsibility. But in order to fulfill that, and in order to take that and become something of country, to find my flow in the river and the natural state of things, to become the tree, I, in this season, need to do the inner work, because this work, this is the key that will unlock my next level. My inner healing and building and becoming someone who is brave enough to believe in her self-worth, and that it is inherent in my humanity. My worth is not up for debate. My humanity is not something to be politicized. It is, but it doesn't mean I have to partake of that narrative. I know it will no longer prostitute my trauma to justify my strength and my power. I am ancestrally guided. I am culturally grounded, and I am dreaming led. I am Chantel Thompson, the Barkindji Warrior, warrior heart. I am a proud, staunch First Nations woman, Barkindji Ngimpa. I'm a proud mum of 5 children that I brought into, 4 of which I brought into the world. 1 is from my heart. I'm very proud to be Anishan to many more who call me that, who choose to call me Anishan. To be the founder and the guide of the Kilana Foundation is one of the greatest gifts and responsibilities I've had. I've fucked up along the way, you mob. I've made mistakes along the way. I've hurt people that I've loved. I've fallen face first so many fucking times. And yet it is not because of the mistakes that I've made. It is because I never lost hope of getting better. That is what is driving me now, is not the fear that I'm not going to make a mistake, or that I'm not going to fall over, or that in a couple of weeks or a couple of months when I get successful again, or something happens that my nervous system doesn't shut down again, or that I don't disappear again. But maybe the next time I disappear or don't feel like I'm worthy, maybe it's only for a day rather than a week. Or maybe I can get it down to a minute where that little voice whispers, or that feeling goes, you're not allowed to be this person. You're not allowed to tell that story. You're not allowed to have that life. It's only for a minute. And then I can wrap my arms around that version of myself and give myself the love and the hug and the coaching and the words that I should have had from others, and give them to myself to heal that part of myself, so that when I stand in a room or I stand in a moment where I can do that for someone else, and I can see someone else questioning their self-worth, questioning their power, I can be with them in that and empower them and guide them to heal that part of themselves that doesn't believe that they are inherently worthy or capable of being who they want to be or who they can be. Because I've done that myself. I've navigated that journey myself. Because you can only take people as far as you have taken yourself. You can only tell the story of what you have lived if you have integrity. You can only teach from what you've learned and what you've practiced and embedded within yourself, because it's not just what we know, it's what we've executed, it's what we've acted on, it's what we've embedded in our lives. So I really felt called to share this yarn with you, mob, because this warrior heart season, this heart and hustle season of rebuilding myself from the challenges that 2023 and 2024 have taken me on, and the fight that I've had to do to be myself in the world, the amount of experiences that I've had where people have said who you are, Chantel, as a woman, as a mother, as a partner, as an Aboriginal woman, as a business owner, as the founder of Kilana, it's not welcome in our world. It's not allowed. It's not supported. When I've put my hand up to ask for help, and I was judged for asking for help, or when I see someone else in the community ask for help or offer to do something, and you just see the flood of resources and support being given there. But then I'm like, well, what's the difference between me and them? But being okay that there are different ways to do things in the world, and that if this is what I'm called to do and this is the experience that I have to build from, then having the courage to say, hey, I'm Chantel Thompson. I'm the Barkindji Warrior, Warrior Heart. I'm a proud Barkindji Ngimpa woman. I'm Ngamika to 5 beautiful, powerful children, young people. I'm Ani Shan. I'm a 3-time world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm a black belt world champion. I'm the founder of Kilalana. I'm the owner of Wapanya. And this is me, and this is my story. I am ancestrally guided. I am culturally grounded, and I am dreaming led. And that is the story that I am moving forward with. I am here to bring the warrior heart to the world. I will not start from the trauma and the adversity that I faced. My book is titled Warrior Heart First, From Suicide to World Champion. That story and that journey has been seeded in the calling of my ancestors. As I said, my dreaming was seeded in the womb of my ancestors and the songlines prior to the 230 years of colonial history and pain and trauma. This won't be the last time that I fall down and break. And yet, now that this truth is in my conscious awareness, that the greatest thing holding me back is that I do not believe I am worthy or allowed to be wealthy, worthy and well, to be the Barkindji Warrior in the world. This is the work that I will do, to lay the foundations, to nurture the seeds that have been planted in my soul and in my spirit, to allow them to grow, so that one day my story, my tree, can become shade for the next generation, for the next woman questioning her power and her worth, because life or the world or herself has told her she's not allowed, she's not worthy. So if you are watching this now, or you find this later somewhere, I hope that you find the courage to look within, to take the responsibility, the privilege and the opportunity to heal yourself, to show up in the full power and the potential that you have. Because when you do, those that you love and serve, and those that are to come after you that will hear your story, will be beneficiaries to your experience rather than collateral damage. And can you take responsibility for how other people receive you? If you are showing up and doing the best that you can, it doesn't mean that you're not going to make mistakes. It doesn't mean that you're not at risk of hurting other people or doing things that will cause pain or fuck up somewhere along the way. That's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And yet I hold that if you come from your heart and you're willing to take responsibility and do the work to the best of your ability, and not weaponize your mistakes against yourself, but rather to have the integrity to take responsibility and to learn from them and to become better, to do better, then that is a real warrior of light. That is a real warrior heart. That's what it means to stand in your power, be your truth, and to follow your heart. It's not just it's imperative that we need it now more than ever. We need people who are leading from their hearts, from their truth, from responsibility, because there are many people in positions of power and privilege who are not fulfilling their obligations. And I've been one of them. I'm sure I'll make mistakes again in the past, but this is growth. This is what it means to be a human being. And yet I am worthy of being myself in the world. I'm allowed to be myself in the world in all my power and my potential, but also in my pain and my trauma and my dysfunction. So here is me leaving you with this. If you have something that is calling you, or you have buried a part of yourself or a dream or something still whispers in your soul and your spirit, it is there for a reason, because it is needed in the world. And if you already have that dream or that calling, it only comes to you because it is completely and entirely possible for you. And imagine what becomes possible on the other side of you going after that thing, or giving yourself permission to have that thing in your life, or to be that person. Who will you become if you step into your power and potential? Who else will benefit? What will be the ripple effects? What momentum will be created? And what seeds will be planted for future generations to become beneficiaries of the harvest that you have planted? by you having the courage to step up and say, this is me, this is who I'm called to be in the world, and I'm willing to do the work to become the person. Because that's the thing, this is my work, is no longer dancing in the shadows of my power and my pain and my purpose. It is now my job to fully lay the foundations where I move 100% of the time convicted and committed in my truth that I am well worthy of being Chantel Thompson, the Barkindji Warrior, Warrior Heart, that I am worthy of being a mum, of being Annie Shan, of being an Aboriginal woman in this world and in this community. And it is not to be defined by others' narratives about who I am, who I've been, and who I'm allowed to be. It doesn't mean that I won't be hurt by those things, and it won't mean that I won't feel afraid again. This is the season where my story is founded in my power, my purpose, and my potential, not my pain and my trauma. This is the warrior heart, and this is my work, is to heal my inner narrative, to heal at a soul and a spirit and a body level, to believe in here that I am worthy and that I am allowed. And when I heal her, when I heal that belief, and I start to own my power, that I am worthy, I can only imagine what's going to open up, because I'll be moving from my heart. I'll be moving from my truth. I'll be moving from my power. And I won't need others' permission. I won't need others' love, because I will give that all to myself. My ancestors have already given it to me. They've already called me for this. So anyone else is just a bonus. Big love you, mob, and thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing, listening to this. And if it has resonated with you in some way, please let me know. If you want to know more about how you can follow along on the journey, follow my socials, come and join my Warrior Heart community over on School. My book is coming out July 1st, Warrior Heart, Suicide to World Champion. And I'm open for workshops and speaking gigs and coaching and advisory roles. So if you are questioning your worth in the world, if you are questioning your worth in yourself, this is your opportunity. This is your invitation. This is your call to sit with yourself, to create some space in yourself, to go, what does the next step look like? To build that belief in yourself, that self-love, that you are worthy, that you have, just by virtue of being born a human being in this time and place, that you are already worthy. Your value and your humanity is not up for debate. We shouldn't have to feel like we need to earn someone else's love to be worthy to be in a relationship with them or to be in a space with other people. Be courageous enough to do the work on yourself, to show up for yourself, and allow that to be the thing that ripples out into the world of how you show up and serve those that you love. Create a life that you are proud of. Create a life that is worth living. We're good at surviving. Let's step into creating lives that are worth living. Because who we are now is going to be the legacy and the story that we leave behind for our children and those that are connected to us. Make it one worth following. Make it one that creates resources for the next generation, but also do it for yourself as well, because you are worthy and you are allowed. Big love you, mob, from Chantel Thompson, the Barkindji Warrior, Warrior Heart.